What is going on, everybody? AHS Rules, back again with another video, as we're here once again for another Ring of Honor TV review, episode number 84. An extremely interesting episode of Ring of Honor Wrestling. Why so? Well, we'll get to it. There will be a lot of side topics and other things to talk about during the course of this review, but something extremely notable about this episode of Ring of Honor is that during this episode, we witnessed a Ring of Honor classic match, a historic match in Ring of Honor history, that being Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi. They played the match in its entirety with new commentary to celebrate its anniversary, as it happened on October 1st, 2005, which October 1st was several days ago. I believe Tuesday, to be exact. Actually, it might have been Monday. I think it was Tuesday, though. So, we'll cover that match and several things throughout the course of this review. We have several big matches to talk about in ROH. We had a world title match on this episode as well. So let's get to the review portion. As our opening contest this week was a proving ground match. Dustin Rhodes and the Von Erich versus Tony Nese, Ari Daivari, and Mark Sterling. Mark Sterling does make note prior to the match that he feels it's unfair that he's in this match, but to get his guys a proving ground bout, he would do it. And Nese and Daivari said that they would protect him. Did they hold their word? Let's find out. Daivari and Marshall start the match off with Sterling wanting to get tagged in when he sees that his opponent is down, and then immediately tagging out once they stand back up. The Von Erichs land a double drop kick on Nese. Once Dustin tags in, he wants Sterling, but he rolls to the outside of the ring. Dustin lands a Canadian Destroyer on Nese, and this leaves Sterling to be by himself, and he gets trapped in the corner where Dustin tries to hit him with the Shattered Dreams, but the referee won't allow it, and then the referee gets distracted when both the Von Erichs apply the Iron Claw to Nese and Daivari, and so this gives Dustin Rhodes the opportunity to hit the Shattered Dreams and a twisting suplex, leaving Dustin Rhodes and the Von Erichs to win the matchup. The next matchup is very quick. Nyla Rose versus Katie Arquette. I don't know if there's any relations to David Arquette, but in the wrestling world, when you hear Arquette, you more than likely think of David. So, did Katie impress enough to change that mindset? She did land a headbutt, and then gets immediately blasted with a lariat by Rose, and then Nyla follows this up with a cannonball, a senton, and a beast bomb to win the matchup. We get a Minion Empowerment meeting, a emergency mem as they call it, with Lexi Nair saying that they're setting up a big celebration for Athena with potentially appearances from Ja Rule and Pitbull. There will be, I believe, Punch and Cake. Again, all this is potential things. And while Athena and Lexi are celebrating this celebration potentially taking place, Billy Starks is not feeling it and does not care. And Athena notices this and wants Billy to get over it. She doesn't really understand why Billy is mad, and Billy even points out to Athena that the problem is Athena. They're mad at each other over last week and Abaddon coming out and Starks being left alone with Athena. And then several weeks ago, Abaddon came out and Athena was left alone with Abaddon, and Billy walks away from this situation. So the issue is still unsolved, and you mentioned Abaddon so much. Abaddon actually appears, and it seems like Abaddon's going to touch Athena's championship belt, but it doesn't happen, and it was kind of just awkward silence. And I did say last week that, Abaddon gets a women's title match every year around Halloween, and it's kind of, I don't want to say a running joke in AEW, but it definitely something that gets pointed out. And it didn't happen again this week. We did not get the Abaddon women's title match this week. If they delay this until Halloween, we just got to keep pointing out the obvious. But we'll see what happens, and we'll see when this Athena celebration happens. It should have already happened because she surpassed the longest reigning title reign in Ring of Honor history several weeks ago now. So they're just delaying the inevitable. in several different ways. Next matchup is Anthony Henry and Beef versus Anthony Cartero and Wes Barkley. Barkley and Henry start the match off, but the action picks up once Beef tags in, and he has to stick up for his second cousin by marriage, even taking out both his opponents at once. Both Beef and Henry land double stomps, and then Henry hits another double stomp, this one off of the top rope, to win the matchup. And I'll go ahead and cover later on in the episode, Beef gathers a camera guy, and he wants to capture himself and Henry doing a tag team promo, and Henry gets upset about this because he doesn't consider himself in a tag team with Beef. He is in a tag team with JD Drake. And Beef was like, yeah, where is JD Drake? Like, can I meet JD Drake? Can I at least, like, talk to JD Drake? And he wants his number, and Henry still does not want anything to do with this. So, we get another tag team match. This one, a rematch of a match that happened several months ago and has business has picked up, per se. This time, it is the Infantry versus the Outrunners. Enric Abani mentions that they have kind of aligned themselves and, are allies, but once the match ends, it kind of doesn't really feel that way. Bravo and Magnum start the match off, even though both quickly tag out with back-and-forth action via arm drags and roll-ups. Magnum is able to roll his way away from his opponents to get the hot tag to Floyd. The Infantry attempt to hit Boot Camp, but it is stopped, and the Outrunners win the match after hitting Total Recall. The Infantry are not too thrilled with the loss, immediately getting out of the ring and being very upset, but we do get a massive handshake from the Outrunners and a big pop for the crowd. As now, we get to a big-time matchup, this being Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi, an historic match in wrestling and mainly Ring of Honor history that took place on October 1st, 2005. And like I said, I got several side notes to mention before we get into this review. Thing one, I wrote my notes in red pen for this match, mainly because my other pen started going out, but it's just something to do different, so I wanted to point that out. Thing two, I posted on my Instagram a crazy, it's something that I think about a lot, and it is funny because it was the perfect time to do it, but there was a Reddit thread years ago, and I don't know how true it was, didn't fact check it, but the picture's there, and it was of Kenta Kobashi at a Wendy's, and the Reddit thread was a guy saying that he was the one that helped get Kobashi to the arena for this match, and he wanted to eat, and the closest place to the arena was a Wendy's, and it is just a hilarious picture and it's just moments, hours away from this matchup. This is one of my favorite matchups. It's just, I can go on and on about it, and we'll eventually we'll cover the match, but it's just a dream match that when you say Joe versus Kobashi, you think of lots of different things. Like I said, the main thing that comes to mind is a dream match. And I wish that we could get more of these in wrestling. We very rarely kind of get those. And I've even talked to people about this and like, what would be the modern day equivalent of Joe versus Kobashi? And it gives several different answers, but it's just something that is lovely. And I kind of also, this is another weird thing, we should get more shows / pay-per-views that it's just straight up the wrestlers' names, because if you could promote it as that big time matchup, that means it's a freaking big time matchup. Another thing we need to bring back are streamers, because Kobashi got a crap ton and we do not get streamers in the modern era of ROH, and that was something that helped ROH stick out. But enough of me yapping. Let's get on to the review. I hope I can do it justice, but a lot happens. I will also say, and this is involved in the match, a lot of times during the course of this match, I will say Kobashi lands a bunch of chops. And I notice that when I do my ROH reviews, I say that a lot, and it kind of becomes numbing because I'm saying it so much. This time around, it's not the case. Kobashi, master the chop. It feels different when he does it, and It is just a different feeling. So I'll end up saying it a lot, but it means something when it's coming from Kenta Kobashi. So, starting the match off, Joe starts off with some kicks and a big smack, which pushes Kobashi to land a big chop. Joe takes it to the outside after hitting a tope suicida. Once back in the ring, it is followed by big chops and a big enziguri. Joe lands several soccer kicks, which fires Kobashi up to land some chops. Joe lands a Ole kick on the outside, but once again, Kobashi follows this up with a big chop, this one sending Joe over the barricade. Kobashi takes it back in the ring, and Joe tries to fight back with kicks, which follows up with Kobashi landing more chops, and the two then start to have a chop battle. Kobashi applies a Cobra twist, and the two crumble into the ropes. Joe lands an STO and follows this up with a senton, giving himself a bit of an advantage. Joe lands a buckle bomb and is able to angle himself to hit a muscle buster that gets a 2 count. Joe then hits a power bomb but struggles to lock in an STO, but eventually does. Both men struggle to get up following this. But once they do, Kobashi lands a spinning back fist that puts Joe into the corner and then follows us up with dozens and dozens of chops with the crowd going wild. Joe grabs the bottom rope after a Kobashi suplex. Kobashi turns his sleeper hold into a suplex for another close 2 count. Joe smacks, aka chops, do not give much effect to Kobashi, and he is able to follow this up with several spinning back fists and a burning lariat to win the matchup. Like I said, a historic matchup in Ring of Honor history. Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman were also doing commentary over this, reminiscing about this time period in ROH and the match itself, and we're putting over how important this match was of ROH and why ROH still exists today, because it is matches and moments like this that have happened that we can reminisce about. Even though it has been a while since we have had anything this close to this level, but it's nice to reminisce about this. I also remember there was an episode, if I'm exact. I should have fact-checked it, but it's not that important. But there's an episode that was not that long. It was Gringo Loco versus Blake Christian in the main event. And I was like, what the hell is this? This is last year. And it was a short episode, but they followed it up with Samoa Joe versus James Gibson. And I was like, I'm not watching this. I don't really care that much. So this would have been a short episode if they did not include this match. But like I said, to celebrate its anniversary, and because it's such an historic match and one of my favorite matches, I was like, I'm going to cover it this week. Before we do cover the main event of this episode, I do want to say Samoa Joe in 2005, because I've never really had the proper time to mention any of this. Samoa Joe had an insane 2005, and I'm not even going to mention everything he did, but he had this matchup with Kenta Kobashi. He had a matchup with Jushin Thunder Liger on pay-per-view. He had a match with the Necro Butcher, which is one of the most insane matches in wrestling history. All three of these matches, Kobashi, Butcher, Liger, also in 3 different promotions. And then Samoa Joe started his time in TNA in 2005, the undefeated streak. He won the Super X Cup, I believe, at Sacrifice, which set up the unbreakable triple threat match between himself, Christopher Daniels, and AJ Styles, which everyone knows about, and then started his X Division title reign at the very end of the year. So I wanted to give my flowers to Samoa Joe. And I tweeted this a while ago, but it's just such an insane resume just for 1 year as we get to our main event this week. Last note on Joe vs. Kobashi. I want to do retro reviews on the channel again, because I used to do them. At some point, they will more than likely come back. I don't know exactly when. I'm hoping that AEW ends up on Max and the tape library ends up on Max. That way I can cover AEW products. That's just a different topic. Point being, this was one of those matches and shows that I was going to cover on the retro reviews, but now I can kind of scratch that. So ROH beat me to the punch, but it's fair. It is their choice. I'm not against it. But now we get to this main event that I keep talking about and putting off. For the ROH World title, it is Mark Briscoe versus Matt Taven. Now, it was announced this week on Dynamite that Mark Briscoe will be facing Chris Jericho at WrestleDream, and it's scheduled to be for the World Championship. But they announced prior to this Taven-Briscoe match that if Taven wins, Briscoe versus Jericho still take place. It just won't be for the World Championship. And I can just say I'm not looking forward to that match. After the segment on Dynamite, it made me lose interest in the match. I just want Mark Briscoe to retain the championship. I wasn't really interested in seeing a Jericho second ROH World title run. And so, again, especially after that segment on Dynamite, please, Mark, win the match. Also announced for WrestleDream to take place on the 0 hour, Atlantis Jr. versus Brian Cage for the television championship. Atlantis Jr. does not really appear that much on ROH TV, and Brian Cage does, and he has an insane undefeated streak, so that'll be an interesting match. But now, this world title match, Mark Briscoe, Matt Taven. Let's get to it. Taven starts off with a roll-up, and Mark is extremely fast-paced during this match and lands a drop kick to the outside, but Mike Bennett gets in the way that delays a Mark Briscoe blockbuster from happening, but it does. Taven moves out of the way from a froggy bow and is able to hit a disaster kick, and then Taven lands a neck breaker that gets a 2 count. Taven's purple bomb is very similar to a Blue Thunder bomb, but they called it a purple bomb, gets a 2 count. Taven shouts out Chris Jericho, but misses a line salt, and then Briscoe hits a Uranagi that gets a 2 count. Taven's big running knee gets a 2 count, and then Taven hits a frog splash that gets a 2 count. Briscoe gets his knees up from a second frog splash attempt, but Taven gets his knees up for a froggy bow as both men struggle to get on their feet. Briscoe hits a fisherman's buster suplex that gets a 2 count, but what finally gets a 3 count when a J driller for Mark Briscoe as he retains his world championship. And like I said, is scheduled to face Chris Jericho at WrestleDream. So, an extremely interesting episode of ROH. Like I said, I spent a lot of time talking about Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi, but it is definitely well worth it. I am intrigued to see what happens on next week's ROH as I'm turning through my papers on video. Not very professional, because I said this in the last episode of Shooting the Breeze that from All Out to about Full Gear, AEW, and by extent ROH, is a bit of a blur because they got so much going on and taping schedule is weird and etc. So they've been taping on and off different things for ROH, and I don't want to spoil things because I don't know what will air, but reportedly 2 of the matchups that they filmed had to be stopped due to injuries, so I don't know if they will actually air those. If I'll talk about that then. It's just the waiting game. So, I enjoyed this episode of ROH. If they go this route of showing historic matchups, it will very much depend on what the matchups are, if I'll cover them or not. But with it being Joe versus Kobashi, I was doing it. So, I'm going to get some tissues to wipe my nose because I keep wiping it with my hands and distracting y'all. Hopefully, you enjoy your weekend. You enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one, because I'm out. I hit the wrong button.